Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Property Pros Podcast. I am Mark Goldwich.
Peter LaFramboy.
We are public insurance adjusters in Jacksonville, Florida, but we're interested in all things property. Today, we have a great guest for you. Her name is Lisa Massis. She is founder and president of Lofty Asset Management. Lisa, how about if you take a couple of minutes, tell us about yourself and Lofty and what you do.
Sounds great. Thank you, gentlemen, for having me. I'm Lisa Massis with Lofty Asset Management. We're a real estate investment management development firm out of Jacksonville. We have properties across North Florida. We've worked in Georgia, Central Florida. We typically focus on Class C assets, 1970s, 80s builds, though we did spend several years in new construction, development, lease-ups. We find it all fun. We are generally considered the ambulance chasers of property management, and we love the title. Interesting times to be in the industry, so every day is a fun ride.
Well, yeah, it's funny that you say interesting times. Let's give everybody perspective. So if somebody watches this years from now, the year right now is 2021, we're in the fall, and there's a absolute buying frenzy all over the country, but specifically here in Jacksonville. We've talked about this in the past, and we briefly brought it up a few minutes ago when we first started here. Our particular region, we see a lot of growth here in Jacksonville. What are you seeing with the data research that you're doing?
Jacksonville is just on top of every market you look at, and most recently, every study you look at. Most recently, I mean, LinkedIn put out a study about more professionals. I mean, that seems to be Jacksonville started in 2016, oddly, which didn't get a lot of attention. In 2016, we had like our largest growth, and it's not even just Jacksonville. It's Jacksonville and like the 5 metropolitan areas surrounding Jacksonville, all of which kind of have their unique styles and attributes that make them appealing for various reasons. And since 2016, it has been consistent and has just blown up. And I think, from the start of COVID, it kind of gave people time and maybe some opportunity to make some changes, which maybe is the reason we're seeing this just expedited rate of people flooding to Jacksonville and Florida overall. I mean, Florida overall is like 22 states of the country. Note Florida is the number one loss of their residents go to Florida. I mean, 22 states, that's huge. 1 out of every 8 people in the country leaving their home state is coming to Florida. And, of that, it's like 36%, I believe it is, that is coming to the greater Jacksonville area for an abundance of reasons. I mean, the average cost of living in Jacksonville is still like 16% lower than the median for the US. That's very appealing. No state taxes. Employment has here since the 90s, we have been in like the top 3 to 5 of best places for employment. I think that the average is like 3 hours to find a job here. And
oh my gosh,
3 hours. That's what it is. I think I read one not about a week ago. It's like 2.25 hours to find a job here. I mean, there's not too many places in the US that you can find that. And even within Florida itself, there's the study that was done as top 10 areas sending residents to Jacksonville. On that list of the top 10, 6 are in Florida that are moving to Jacksonville. Miami is seeing a huge loss of their population. We're grabbing a great bit of that. But we're also just grabbing people from smaller towns throughout Florida, smaller towns in Georgia. And then you kind of got these far stretching effects that are coming from the Northeast in huge droves. And those who live here see it. We're stuck in traffic and there's New York tags everywhere, New Jersey tags, a lot of Delaware. I mean, we're getting a big piece of that pie. And the question becomes, who is coming here and what kind of housing, from my perspective and what we do for a living, what should we be trying to present? What is this market going to need? And it is more middle class housing. We are not, even with the enormous growth of new construction, we're not even coming close to meeting the demand of people that are coming into this market and the people that are anticipated to continue to stream in here. And then when you look at the demographics of these people moving into the market, the housing that's available and coming available, the new product that's being put out there, there's just a gap between what these people can afford and what we're producing. And we spoke briefly on it earlier. it's not for a lack of space or a lack of, Jacksonville's huge, Duval County is enormous. We clearly have the space. We have old space. We have old office that's not doing great in areas that, are not seeing a huge rise in office. And COVID, I believe, exacerbated the straining on office space, which is consistently in Jacksonville been like the lowest valued retail out there has been office space. Next to that, is retail space. So we have all of this in these various submarkets where housing is in high demand, but there's not necessarily a high demand for office space or retail, brick and mortar retail. And with COVID pulling everybody and giving everybody kind of a new perspective of, oh, I could send my people home to work and not incur that cost, I feel like it's even more so creating more availability in the office space. So I think our city has to get, don't get me wrong, developers are doing a phenomenal job putting up new Class A, new construction, everything's beautiful, luxury, we're $1,450, $1,500 a month for a one bedroom, some as much as $2,000. The people coming into the submarket who are making 42, 48, average median household is like 61. That's not where they're going to be looking. And I think that's where we've got to do the better job of catering the type of housing that we're putting into this market to accommodate these people so that we can continue to receive them. Otherwise, we're going to end up in a housing situation where we've got an abundance of one and not enough of another. So I'm hoping more people are starting to identify the need, and we'll start kind of getting creative on ways to accommodate these folks coming in.
Lisa, what do you see as the disconnect there? These people who are supposed to be putting out the properties, building them, renovating them, converting them, whatever it is, there's, theoretically, they're the ones who are forecasting 5 years ago and saying, this is what's coming, so this is what we need to do. From your perspective, what's the disconnect?
I don't know if it's a disconnect as much as it's pretty on paper. New construction, luxury properties, the difference between building, what I would call a B property and an A+ property is a difference of probably 9% in construction costs. You're upgrading appliances, countertops, light fixtures. The bones are going to be the bones. You're going to incur that cost either way. So when they're looking at dollars and cents, obviously it makes sense. Why not spend the extra 9%? The difference in rent is going to, equate to 23 to 30 by adding those bells and whistles. So I think that's where we've got to get more creative and saying, okay, how can we keep these construction costs down to make it more appealing for these developers, people like me, people like you, to move in a different direction, to not just be awed by these luxury Class A rental rates, and start considering how to bring down these construction costs, whether it be repurposing these old spaces or looking at some of these new creative, new construction methods, bring in and to supply what this population is going to need and going to continue to need. Additionally, they're the kinds that stay. So it pays for themselves, because I think over the long haul, you end up with less turnover. You're not leasing. New construction luxury housing tends to draw those. They're eyeing purchasing. They're here. They just moved here. They want to figure out what area they want to be in. What schools do they want their kids to go to? They're going to stay there for a year, maybe to sign a contract to build a house, put something under contract that exists, and then you're going to lose them to the ownership market. Congratulations to them. The more middle class housing, those residents stay. They're not eyeballing purchasing a home in 2 years. It's like a 10-year plan for most of them. So why not accommodate them? Those are your mortgage payers.
Yeah, I agree 100% on that. I lived through Columbus, Ohio, when it went through explosive growth in the 90s and the early 2000s. And so I left around 2010 to move down here, 2012, whatever it was. But there, we had the university, we have lots of Fortune 500 companies. And here, even though I've lived here for so long, I'm not sure what the draw is. Do you know what the draw is? Besides no property tax. I'm not saying, look, we have nationwide insurance. We have the limited brands. There's so many Fortune 500 companies up there. Here, I'm not know how many we actually have.
No, but all the studies show that people don't move here for eyeing an industry. Well, other than medical, medical industry kind of draws its own, and we always kind of set it aside from when we look at these studies. People move here for lifestyle. which is completely different. If you look at these studies, in relation to Columbus, to Ohio, you see some completely different. People move there for the economy of it. Like they're thinking on a scale of economy, how does that financially suit them and apply to their life? That is not necessarily the case for Florida. The average person who moves out of state, it's like 40% is considering housing. Not necessarily for Florida. Florida, it's about lifestyle. It's about they want to improve their circumstances. And when they consider, oh, there's no state tax, especially when so many, New York just went up on their state tax. So many others have kind of tweaked their state laws to make it more difficult to get out of state tax. That's hugely appealing. And you really can't compete with a lifestyle argument on Florida, in my Floridian opinion. And I've lived all over the country. I've lived in Virginia. I've lived in California. I've been everywhere. There is a different kind of lifestyle here. It does present, it's the #1 state for public parks. Like you can't go anywhere else and find the number of just natural public parks that you get here.
Well, I kind of thought the same thing, because that's part of the reason what drew me here. It wasn't it was just, hey, it's 75 and sunny in February, and you can walk the beach when you want to, or you can go to these theme parks. There is a lot to do all within a very short drive. So I agree 100% with that. I just wondered if there was industries that were drawing people in.
There are some industries. We have some really large companies that are doing some pretty unique things to draw people, because we need more people to work. Specifically, like I said, the market is changing a little bit as far as who was coming last year, and it's shifting and kind of taking a different shape this year. We're getting a lot more higher end professionals. But there's some companies doing some pretty incredible things to try and get more people and to try and attract people here. Baptist Health is obviously a huge one. Though they've been, Bank of America, not so much, because honestly, they sent a lot of people home to work and they're still kind of playing with their situation. Mayo, Florida Blue, we have so many. Amazon is doing such big things here. So it's the healthcare market, and then all the markets that support the healthcare market, which, Jacksonville's been known for a very long time. Then we've started gaining our financial legs. I guess we were never known as like a financial savvy, market but that's kind of changed. We've been getting more of these financial institutes, their legs here. And I think a lot moving from the Northeast is quality of life. They get cheaper employees here. The cost of living is less, so they're able to save. And these companies they need staff. They need people to run them. So they're getting more creative in the way that they draw people here to meet. If you're a financial institute, you're in Florida, who has not been known for producing a lot of financial minds, you've got to be able to draw people here back from the Northeast that, are experts in these specific sectors and these specific roles. And it seems that they're doing a good job. It's, the fruits of their labor have started to pay off.
Yeah.
For us.
Some of the networking groups that I'm in the chamber, and I'm in another networking group, civic organization, and they always bring in people from the city who are they are hyper focused on recruiting businesses from all over the country to bring them here, like they did with Amazon and with other companies. And, they might not be huge companies, but they're talking about a couple hundred employees here and several hundred employees there. The port that they're improving on, and they're deepening the waterways to get larger vessels in. And that's going to create a lot of opportunity for all kinds of people working in those industries.
Yeah, just what you're talking about, the port. What Shad Khan is going to do downtown, all of these new development Jacksonville is going to be completely, from what I know, Jacksonville, being born and raised here in Arlington, you drive through the city, it does not look anything like it did even 10 years ago. Can you imagine in another 10 years with all of the approved plans that have been put into place and all of these different companies that have been already approved plans, budgets, everything in place to redevelop these areas that are, ages old, and we have kind of like the roots, we have the beaches, we have the rivers, we have the road system, we have it all already. The infrastructure is there to build upon. It just has taken us maybe a little bit longer to kind of get the engine going, but now all of a sudden it seems like it's at full-fledged. It feels like, we are where Miami was, in the 80s.
Yeah. So how do you sound the alarm or get the powers that be to start building these Class C housing for all the people that are going to need it and can't afford anything else?
We are personally taking on 2 development projects this year because we feel like we have to. We're kind of going outside the box a little bit. We're not going with typical, construction template. And we're kind of advising away from, right now the price per unit is so heavy and so high, it's difficult, especially when you're talking about C-class housing, all of a sudden it's priced like, B and A class housing. And I understand because occupancy wise, we've never seen numbers like this. Like even with COVID going on, our collection numbers are great. We're raising rents because it's Wednesday and we don't have much available. I have one property I raised rents on 3 times in the last 3 weeks. And I'm about to do it again tomorrow. So I understand why everybody's kind of just like, well, the train is moving. It's throwing out, gold coins. Let me jump on it while I can. No fault to you. Absolutely. Grab it. But while we're thinking of these, we should be thinking about more long-term. And I think people need to, we can jump on the bandwagon a little bit, keep one foot on planet Earth, and let's maybe look at where the actual needs are coming in and let's meet that demand because it's going to be huge. I mean, you can't be the state with the #1 growth in the country, the city with like the #1 growth in the country, and not be looking at who is coming in here and what do they need. And I think there are some businesses that are, and developers and investors who have identified this and are clearly pursuing it. I would like to see the city, get a little bit more flexible and their ability to allow people to reutilize space. I think that is going to be utterly important for the future of our city. And I think they will, because I think they realize that what they're going to be facing, I mean, we don't want to be LA. And that's exactly what's going to happen is we're going to outprice all of our influx of new residents if we don't give them more availability.
Yeah, it's interesting that you brought up COVID, and I was going to ask about that. Like, how did it affect you? But you made it sound like it didn't. I was wondering, with what was the federal moratoriums that were in that gave people an ability to pause their rental payments? Did you see?
Worst it got was probably last September. I think we had like 4% what we would call non-payers, like meaning for whatever reason they had stopped paying and they were more than 2 months behind, which was, I mean, don't get me wrong, at the time it felt like the whole world was going to come down on us because that's like unheard of. But no, we had to be flexible. We waived late fees, month-to-month fees. We took payments, partial payments we would normally have never have taken. We kind of took it situation by situation, did the best we could with each circumstance. Negotiated some more. We had great attorneys that worked with us, and I feel like we're on the other side of it. Now we kind of have more like funds out there. So people who aren't necessarily in real struggle from COVID, don't get me wrong, they've been hit to some degree, but not destitute from COVID, are leaning on these third parties who are paying their rent up for 2-3 months in advance. There's one organization paying like 12 months. So you almost have a little bit of this different circumstances. It's like the resident can pay, but they want to push the envelope and see why not if there's all this free money. That I kind of, it's kind of putting us in a different zone, but they're not going to eviction. And if they get denied, they're coming in and paying their rent because they see the housing market is so scarce right now, they can't lose their house. So we're not running into a lot of like COVID troubles. I mean, the ones that were protected under the CDC, we had some that, I mean, it got really bad. They ran up really large debts and then we had to write off those debts. So like kill our one resident, like kill our financials for the month because we'd have to write off like 9-10 grand from this one resident who'd been CDC protected for 9 months. That's over. So it's kind of coming back into focus and looking like it did pre-COVID a bit.
Yeah, so it seemed a little bit more scary at first, but the reality is you're right. I mean, it's really hard to find anything at all. And it affected prices right at the beginning of it, and it sort of affected rental rates too, right at the beginning of it. And now obviously both are taken off at this point.
We didn't know what was coming. So even myself, like I look back and I'm like, man, I shouldn't have panicked so much because like I froze my rental rates. I didn't raise rates for like 4 months, which is unheard of. we allowed a lot of people to stay month to month because it was easier to get them out if they were month to month on a holdover eviction. So we had to be very creative, and we did what was best at the time with the information that we had. And I think we navigated fairly well. Hindsight being 2020, I wish I would have been more aggressive on my rents at the time, but we just didn't know what was coming. We didn't know how long that moratorium was going to last. We didn't know, what situation it was ever changing and evolving. And, we all had to become like mini lawyers overnight and try and navigate the Centers for Disease Control, managing our evictions. And how does that even happen? But what do you have to do with our eviction? But hopefully we're on to a new day and we won't have to go back there again. Maybe it'd be lovely.
Yeah. What are I don't know, what are some other things that you're finding interesting in the industry, or what you're seeing besides the need for the C-class? What are some other interesting aspects of real estate rental market in Jacksonville?
Show your maintenance technicians some love, because they are not easily replaceable, and people are realizing how valuable they are. I mean, I've got people driving my properties, they'll see a golf cart and they'll park behind the golf cart and wait for the maintenance guy to come out and offer him just crazy money to leave. Like, because they're in such desperate restraints. Contractors are having a hard time staffing. So it's not like, a year, 2 years ago where you were down a maintenance guy for a month, you just called a contractor in to take care. No, they're short staffed. So like staffing companies don't have staffing. Like, so you need to love your people, take care of them, and they were always the key to success, especially if you were talking about C-class assets. They were always the key. And I think it's just become more prevalent in this economy where skilled labor, manual skilled labor has become like the new golden ticket. Like if you really know plumbing, if you really know carpentry, you are sitting on a winning lotto ticket at this time. It's not about understanding finance anymore. It's about understanding, stacks and supply lines. That's where the money is going to be, because we're just not getting enough people into these, when I was in school, we had trade schools. People learned how to work on mechanical cars. They learned how to cut wood and carpentry. And we just don't have those anymore. Like, there's no skill centers left.
I 100% I agree with you. This generation, when I say my kids and their boyfriends, I'm like, I don't think you're listening to me. Nobody wants to do this job. So that's where you go. You go where everybody else doesn't want to be, because that's going to be in such high demand. You can write your own ticket, and then you just have to be able to attract and gravitate other people towards your team and your organization that can grow with you. But that you totally want to go where everybody else is not.
That's right. Don't laugh at the plumbers.
Oh my gosh.
That plumber is going to own your block by a couple more years, because there's just not enough skilled labor coming into this market. And honestly, the generational thing, like my kids at their age, I knew how to cut a yard. I mean, we did manual labor. My kids had no idea how to start a lawnmower. I'm guilty of the same offense that I'm, complaining about, but unfortunately but they can download anything at any time, at any moment.
I know, and have it delivered tomorrow.
That's right. But that's not going to be the future. The future is going to be the guy that you can call that actually has resources to get somebody in to make a repair, to do the work. That's where we need to start training our young people on manual labor.
You still need somebody to fix the house that you live in. And even when the cars go fully electric, they still have to change tires and, clean. All of that stuff isn't going anywhere. That can't be outsourced.
That's right.
Yeah, no, I literally spent Saturday with my daughter showing her change the wiper blades on the car, going to the car wash ourselves, washing the car, vacuuming it out, doing the mats, air filters. Now they have an air filter in the engine compartment and in the cabin. So, and we just went over just several of these things. And of course, she doesn't want to do it. She just thinks, I just pay somebody to do that.
But what happens when there's nobody to show up?
Right.
That's what I see.
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole nother subject we can get into. I could spend forever there because I actually think that's the next, we see housing crunch right now, right? But the writing's on the wall for the labor crunch. And I'm saying, where are all these guys going? But 10 years ago, we didn't make money off of a YouTube channel or a TikTok or, and these kids all want to
Fortnite.
be TikTok famous. So it's like, guys, somebody's got to do this. And do you know how much income that career can make?
That's right.
Tell me what else you want to do. And they'll say, oh, I want to do this. It's like, okay, that's what that pays. And this like, oh, and I'm like, yeah, it doesn't require any school. You have some common sense. You can put together. And so do you see this business? And like, yeah, it's like, do you want to know how much that guy makes? Because I'll tell you.
But do you remember in school, like we used to have a class that like explained this stuff to you, and like economics, they went through and said, these are the most popular fields in the US. Here's the starting pay, here's the 10-year pay, here's the 20-year pay. We need this back. We need to, you all can't be computer programmers or professional gamers or YouTube stars. Like there's only like 2 YouTube stars now. I don't know how we're going to make that 2 billion. So we got to look for just exactly what you're saying. But that, I feel like out of all the information that's coming to these young people, they're not getting the important stuff, the stuff that actually does shape our greater economy, our country's economy, the world economy, the things that are going to matter in 10 years. When the baby boomers retire, I don't even want to think about that. Like that is going to be, I don't even want to consider it because we're in trouble.
Thanks, Lisa. This has been really great and informative. We appreciate your stopping by and chatting with us today. Before we go, how can people reach you? Social media, the office number, whatever you want to give for people to get in contact with you.
Lofty Assets is on, basically we have our own marketing director who's fabulous. So we're across almost all social media platforms. We also have our website, www.loftyasset.com. Loftyasset.com. There's contact card. You can reach me directly. Happy to hear from you guys.
Great. Again, we appreciate it. Folks, to see more of our videos and podcasts, check us out on Facebook at Property Pros Podcast or our YouTube channel, also Property Pros Podcast. Until next time, we'll see you later. Thank you.